All right. Well, Chris and Lisa Archinal, thank you so much for joining the ActsSocial podcast. I do want to give a little brief background to our viewers on who you are and some of the achievements before we kind of get into the details of your wonderful story. Chris and Lisa are the founders of Our Relentless Pursuit, a recovery ministry and coaching business empowering men and women to heal from trauma, overcome addiction, and cultivate emotional and spiritual maturity. Their story is what they call a but God story. They walked through the devastation of betrayal, trauma in their marriage, and God's grace restored them both individually and as a couple. Chris holds a Master of Divinity and is the author of Relentless Pursuit, A Journey from Addiction to Redemption, and is the author of The Transformational Matrix. He mentors men recovering from sexual addiction and hosts the Purity podcast. Lisa is a certified professional life coach, an APSATS candidate, and holds her ACC with the International Coaching Federation. She holds a BBA in marketing from Baylor University. She is the author of Betrayal Trauma, Survival Guide to the First 90 Days, and is the author of 90 Days of Hope and Healing, Nurturing Your Soul After Pain, Loss, or Betrayal. She also hosts the Emotional Health for Christian Women's podcast as well. Together, they provide biblical coaching, mentoring, training, and speaking on recovery, healing after betrayal, and emotional health. They have been married for 30 years, which is wonderful. And Chris's anchor chapter, which of course we will get into a little bit later, is Ezekiel 37, which I think is kind of fascinating. So I'm excited to hear more a little bit about that later. Their website is ourrelentlesspursuit.com, and their Instagram is at _brave_and_beautiful_life. Obviously, if I butchered any of those, of course, they'll
you
help
did
correct
so
those.
well, Ryan.
Right.
It was a lot. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So truly, I'm so excited for this, and I can't wait to hear more of their story and to hear how God has transformed their issues. So this is going to be wonderful. Thank you both so much for joining.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, first question, Chris and Lisa, you describe your story as a but God story. Before we get into the details, for someone tuning in who has never heard of you, what are the 2 or 3 most important things you want them to know about who you are and what God has done in your marriage?
Ryan, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. We're really grateful for the opportunity to share about what God has done, what the Lord is capable of, his deep love and faithfulness for everyone. And so we're honored to be here. I would say a few things come to my mind when I think about our story and what we would want people to know. And one of those things is that we continually surrendered our story to God. So when things were dark and we didn't know what tomorrow was going to hold, we just stayed surrendered to the Lord. And every day it was like, God, I don't understand why this is happening. I wish I wasn't in this place, but I am trusting you. I am trusting you. And so just kind of, he was holding us, and we kind of felt like we were clinging onto him, but he was holding us the whole time. But I would say a place of surrender is really important. And then I would also say that Chris and I each worked really hard individually on our healing journeys, but we also worked really hard on the marriage, on the relationship. And that's also, I just think, really important. And
that's a big, I think that's a big deal, right? Because I mentor a lot of guys now, and Lisa works with a lot of women, and from both of us, we can testify to the fact that a lot of times the one who's been betrayed will say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need counseling, or I don't need therapy. Like I didn't do anything wrong. And really there's so much betrayal that took place in that no, you didn't do anything wrong, but the betrayal that you're going through, the trauma that you've experienced is real. And so it's really important that you find healing for that. Doesn't mean you have to stay married, but you need to find healing. So you need to choose that for yourself, not just to stay married, but to choose that for yourself so you can get good healing. And I think that's a really, really important, thing to, think through and talk about.
Yeah.
But I also think, just we're just really passionate about being a light on the path that for those that are on this journey. I tell guys oftentimes, I feel like sometimes I have that survivor's guilt at times because my wife was so willing to work on herself and go through the trauma that she dealt with, and she dealt with it in such a powerful and healthy way. It didn't mean she was like, oh, I'm going to save this marriage and we're going to fight through it. Like it was hard early on. She wasn't sure where we were going to land. But she knew where she was going to land. And that was, she was going to find healing. And I knew where I was going to land, that I was going to find healing. Now, originally I started out doing it for myself and started doing it for my marriage, but get into some of that later. But I think just wanting to be a light to others along this journey is really important for us.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Of course, we'll definitely get into a little bit more details of their story as well here as we go on. Well, you guys named your ministry Our Relentless Pursuit. Where does that name come from, and who is doing the pursuing, you or God?
It's really funny that you asked this question because it's a little embarrassing. I feel like I was literally on the last page of my book, Relentless Pursuit, when I realized the double meaning. And I thought about it early on, and my trauma brain and all that stuff was going on. I don't know, but it definitely has a double meaning. But it didn't come to me until later because my first initial thing was I was reading a book called Worthy of Her Trust by Jason Martinkus, and he had a mantra that he came up with that he was just nothing on the planet will stop me from becoming the man God has called me to be. And I read that and I was like, I need a mantra. I'm going to come up with a great mantra. And I got to tell him this later. I was like, I'm not going to come up with one better. So I'm just going to steal his. So I just stole his. But at the end of it, I just added Relentless Pursuit, Relentless Pursuit, Relentless Pursuit. And it was just this concept. And every morning to this day, I have an alarm that goes off at 7:45 that says those exact words because I wanted to relentlessly pursue my God, my wife, and my kids. And I was just nothing was going to stop me from becoming the man God called me to be. And as I got into my story and as I started writing the book, one of the most powerful stories to me was the story of the prodigal son and how he was still a long way off. I get emotional saying it. While he was still a long way off, his father stood up and ran to him. And in that moment, I was like, he's relentlessly pursuing me. It's not just my relentless pursuit of him. It's that he chose to relentlessly pursue me first. And so just the fact that the father ran to him, that's the heart of God. He is always the first to move toward us. Mm-hmm. So really powerful.
Yeah. Wow. And I think so many of us have that experience of times in our life where we're, facing away from God and we're walking down the wrong paths, or maybe we're getting caught up with the wrong things in life. And it's such a powerful feeling. And like you said, sometimes you don't realize it until you're looking back on it like, wow, no, the whole time he's pursuing you. The whole time he wants to have that relationship with you. He wants you to just turn around and look at him, like you're not in this alone. So I think that's such a powerful reminder that, of course, pursue God, do everything you can to walk that narrow path to love our Lord and Savior, but also realize he's doing the same thing with you. And at least in my life, some of the patience he has is quite vast. He's got a lot of patience for us,
for sure.
So, wow, I love that. Well, Chris, your book, of course, is called Relentless Pursuit. a journey from addiction to redemption. You said your life spiraled out of control and left you imprisoned and hopeless. Take us back to the beginning. What did that spiral look like? And how long did it go on before everything fell apart?
Yeah, when I look back, I think that spiral really started a lot longer before the addiction ever became visible. As a kid, I learned how to use fantasy and secrecy and then eventually pornography, but just as a way to cope with life. I learned early on that good boys don't get in trouble and bad boys do. So I just always tried to make sure I was the good boy. And I would do that by lying. I would do it by hiding, and I would just do it by avoiding, getting in trouble. But by the time I was an adult, I had become very good at managing my appearance. I was very good at hiding things. I would do stuff like when I would grab something from my wife's side of the sink or whatever, it was her toothpaste or something, I would grab it, and I was always make sure to put it back in the exact spot that I got it from, because I didn't want her to know that I'd used it. How silly is that? Like, she would care less about her toothpaste.
Yeah.
That was my habit of just hiding things. Like, I don't want to leave a mark. And it was crazy because, like, from the outside, I had a successful career, had a great wife, great kids, great home life. We were active in our church, but privately, I just found myself starting to do more and more double living, and it escalated. And it was one of those, that's one of the lies of addiction, I think, is that it convinces us that, as long as you're functioning, you're okay. The addiction is, but the addiction is progressive, right? And it demands more it demands more while delivering less for us. And over the course, really, of like 30 years, my world became smaller and smaller. And I wasn't just trapped in pornography. I was trapped in shame and fear and isolation and just the exhausting work of hiding who I was. And I began to act outside of our marriage, not just with pornography. And when I hear a guy say just pornography, I always stop that right there. It's not just pornography, but I moved outside of that. And it honestly, just the weight of it, it was so heavy. And everything I'd worked to protect, my image and my family and my appearances of like being the Boy Scout, and I was the de facto chaplain at my workplace and all those things, it just fell apart. And I didn't think I'd ever recover. And now, like, looking back, I see that the end of my story, what felt like the end of my story, was really the beginning of my freedom. And it's just a really powerful moment to see how God's grace is so sufficient, and oftentimes His grace comes in pain and suffering. It's not always love and unicorns and rainbows. So
my pastor at my church, he had I'll just be brief with this, but he had a story about an author. I guess it was one of his close buddies, and he's written I think it's 11 books or 12 books or something like that. But he said one of the books, God kept calling him to write this book. And he was like, no, I don't want to write that. Like, I'm not in that time of my life. I don't want to do that. And just kept pushing it off. And he completely pushed it off. And it was probably, he said, 2 years later, he was at a bookstore, and the exact concept of the book, somebody else wrote the book or wrote the book. No. So he was like, since then, he was like, oh, that showed me hey, if you're not going to do what God's called you to do, God will call someone else.
Yeah.
And just powerful. So, yeah.
It's funny because I actually a recovery friend that writes a lot of books. I was telling him about this. I was like, what do you think about this as a concept for a book? He goes, well, if you don't write it, I'm going to. I'm going to tell everybody I thought of it. So,
yeah. You said, Chris, that hitting rock bottom wasn't condemnation. It was a gracious gift from God. This is a radical reframe. What happened at the bottom that made you see it this way instead?
This is, that comment that people say, how everybody wants to experience a miracle, but no one ever wants to be in a position to need one. I think that's so true with so many of us.
Yeah.
I wanted a miracle. Like I wanted to be free of what this double life I was living. I hated the second person in my world. I despised him. I didn't want to be near him, and it hurt so bad. But I also didn't want to hit rock bottom, and nobody wants to hit rock bottom. And I'm not the exception for sure. It was painful. It's humiliating. It's terrifying. I hurt people that I love the most. I had to face the reality of who I'd become, and for the first time, be honest about that very thing. But I think here's what changed my perspective is like for years, I had asked God to take away this addiction, but I continued to protect my life, that the life I'd built around it. And so I would pray for it, but I would protect the life I'd built around it. And I guess basically I wanted freedom without exposure. I wanted to be healed, but I didn't want to surrender anything to him. And I'm so grateful that God has loved me enough to not answer that prayer. Hitting rock bottom, it stripped away every illusion that I was in control. It exposed lies that I believed and the false life that I had been protecting. And like I said, what felt like God's judgment was really his mercy. And like I was saying earlier, I mean, he refused to leave me in prison and let me, help me get out of this addiction. And I think, even scripture just talks about how the Lord disciplines those he loves, and I experienced that firsthand. And he wasn't punishing me. He wasn't condemning me. He was rescuing me. And honestly, I really believe if my life hadn't fallen apart, I don't if I wasn't turned in, if I wasn't found out, I don't know that I ever would have surrendered. And that I think God knew that the only way he would get my attention is for me to be busted. And honestly, what I thought was going to destroy me became the very thing that God used to save me. So it's been pretty powerful.
For someone who's going through addictions right now and maybe they feel lost, they feel kind of stuck, maybe at the bottom of that pit, what advice would you give them? What would you let them know?
That God is a loving God who really, he wants you to return to him. He is chasing after you. That honestly, I just want to say, phone a friend, right? Find somebody that you can trust, especially if you're dealing with this. Go find a certified sexual addiction therapist. A Christian one is best, right? Go talk to them and share with them. I know it feels dark. I know it feels, you feel lonely and isolated. But you've got to step out and be willing to bring everything to the light.
Yeah. Get it out of the darkness and into the light. That is the only way you can get free. And one thing I would not advise is that you just spill everything to your wife right now. It's very important that you go get the right kind of input from the right kind of therapist before you disclose to your wife. It's really, really critical. We didn't know that. I did it kind of the quote unquote wrong way. But thank God, he used it and it worked. But I always just tell guys, best thing to do is go find help, and you can reach out to me. You'll have our information in the show notes. So reach out to me and I'm happy to be the first guy you call. He's a safe guy to call. Safe guy to call. Come on, buddy.
I love that so much. Thank you so much. Well, when did God become real to you in the middle of your addiction? Was there a specific moment or was it a slow awakening for you?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it is. I think there were moments that I sensed God throughout my life. I think if I'm really honest, he became unmistakably real when my addiction was exposed. Most people would assume that in that moment, God would feel or be the furthest away because it was the darkest, most broken day of my life. And yet for me, it was it was the complete opposite. When everything came to the light, I expected condemnation, Instead, I experienced his grace in a way I never really had before. Anyway, I'll get to that later, but, he wasn't excusing my sin by doing that. But he wasn't abandoning me either. And so I think the coolest thing is that he met me right there in the wreckage,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I see, looking back, I look at that and I'm like, my discovery wasn't the end of my relationship with God. It was the beginning, in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
as long as I was hiding, I couldn't experience him fully. I was not experiencing him fully. I was not experiencing my wife fully, my family fully, life fully, because I was trying to manage my own life. And when secrets are exposed, I was finally able to reach the end of myself. And I think that's where surrender begins, and that's where transformation begins as well.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Love it. Well, Lisa, there's two sides to this story. So I want to kind of open up your side as well, and curious to know your story with it, your perspectives with it. Lisa, you discovered profound betrayal in your marriage and entered a season marked by shock, trauma, and the slow unraveling of the identity you once held in your marriage with Chris. Take us into those early days. What did the discovery feel like, and where did you turn first?
So in one of my books, the one that's called Betrayal Trauma Survival Guide to the First 90 Days. Oh,
I love that.
Vanna White over here. In that book, I describe it as driving down the road on a sunny day, everything's fine, and a 18-wheeler comes out of nowhere and just T-bones me. I'm thrown from the car. I'm bleeding out, and somehow I wake up in the ICU, and there's people all around me just like checking on me, trying to get me to breathe, trying to bring me back to life. So it's very devastating. It's very disorienting. It feels like your whole life has been blown up. And I remember in those early days thinking, I should be in a hospital. Like people should be monitoring me right now.
Right.
Because the emotional pain is so great. So that's an illustration that I use. I turned first to my sister, and she went with me to talk with our pastor, who had a really cool part of our story. He holds a really cool part in our story. Thankfully, our pastor actually had some idea of how to help us and how to handle our situation and point us to the right resources to get the help that we needed. Sadly, most church leaders just aren't equipped for that. That's one of the reasons we're so passionate and have created church training. We've been in church ministry ourselves, so we've walked both sides of this, and
Sure.
And so we're really passionate about helping spiritual leaders just know how to come alongside, because this is a unique journey and you need specialized care for this type of injury. And so, I was super, super blessed by God that I had some really good inner circle friends who were there for me in those early days. And I got the resources pretty quickly that I needed. Yeah.
Well, for a woman listening right now who is in those first devastating days of discovery, what do you wish someone had said to you that nobody else did?
Well, something powerful that our pastor said to me right off the bat that took me by surprise. I just want to say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. I'm deeply sorry. So I would definitely say that. I would say this is not your fault. There's nothing that you did to cause your husband to act out in this way. This is not your fault. I would say there is help available. There is help available. And it will not always feel this way.
Thank you for saying that and for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
You said that even in that darkness, you sensed God whispering that your story wasn't over. What did that whisper sound like, and how did you hold on to it when everything around you was falling apart?
Yeah, so I knew that my story, Lisa's story, was not over. I believed that no matter what happened in our marriage moving forward, that God still had a purpose for me. I would come through this, however incredibly painful this journey was going to be. I was committed to doing that work to heal. God has brought me through some other traumas in my life. And even though part of me was really angry with him, I'm just going to be honest. I would pray for my family, pray for my marriage every single day. And when this happened, I was like, God, you saw me sitting there praying every single day. Like, what is up with this? But I also knew the story of Joseph, who was imprisoned unjustly. And it says Joseph was imprisoned and God was there with him. And that really stuck with me, that life has so much injustice in it. It is a broken world. And I know I'm like really boiling this down, but we do live in a broken world, and God has never left me. And Joseph always continued to surrender his story to God. And I was like, that's me. I am going to continue to surrender my story to God. And then God just did these crazy things in our story as our relationship to keep that moving forward, to the right helpers at the right time, God moments when we needed them, and things like that.
Just to clarify too, so you have always, for the longer a period of time, you've had a relationship with God, correct? Like throughout your marriage, and Chris, of course, you came into a relationship with God. So that's the two different perspectives, right?
Well, we both were raised in Christian homes. Both. Okay. I became a Christian when I was in junior high. At least probably around that elementary school.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and I have a master's in theology. I mean, I have all the, learning.
We met at seminary,
stuff, right? So
we met at seminary.
Oh, awesome! Yeah. Wow.
But I also think it's a great question, because I think that is one of the things that helped us tremendously, is having that background and having that understanding of a God who loves us. It was not a condemning God, and even though I felt that shame in those things, and even though she felt probably abandoned and obviously betrayed, all the stuff you feel, but by God, I mean, there's by God, you can go back and say, no, I know He is. He's the one that kept Peter from sinking. He's the one that knocked down Jericho's walls. He's the one that, all the things, right? So you can look back and see those things. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarification. Well, Lisa, there had to be a moment, or many moments, where one or both of you considered walking away from each other. What kept you in the room? Was it faith, love, commitment, or all three?
I don't think it was any of that.
None of that?
Yeah, if it was none of that, what was it?
Let's see.
It's a God story. It's a God story.
D, none of the above.
D, none of the above.
I probably should have added that on the question.
No, it's great.
No, it's great.
It's a great question. So, our marriage had been hard. Long story short, when the betrayal happened, I really did not see a way forward for our marriage. I hired a divorce attorney, and I had planned to walk away, but God had a girlfriend in my life, had a brief conversation with me. She was not putting pressure on me whatsoever. She was actually a coach, and I have now followed in her footsteps. But she said, she was telling me about what's called a full therapeutic disclosure that you can do when betrayal happens in a marriage, and it's done with a very specialized therapist. And it can be an incredibly healing experience for a marriage. And she had told me about this, and I was like, why would I want to do that? I really didn't want to reconcile. And she said, that's totally fine, totally understandable. She said, Lisa, just a question. What do you want your story to be 10 years from now? When you look back, what do you want to be able to say that you did, to just give an opportunity for God to come in and do whatever he would want to do? It was that kind of a question. Not, again, no pressure whatsoever, but the Lord used that question to open the door just enough for me to say, okay, I'll do this full therapeutic disclosure thing. It was an intensive. It was over 3 days.
Yeah.
Very specialized thing. And it was in that environment where, I sat across from this therapist who was doing this work with us. It was just a one-on-one with me and this therapist. And I said, how do you not just hand the business card of an attorney to every woman who walks in here? How can you sit across from me and say that my marriage could actually recover from this? And he said, it's because our God is a God of redemption. And that was it for me, like in a good way. The Holy Spirit hit me right between the eyes, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that, again, cracked the door just enough for me to say, okay, I'm going to give this a chance. I'm going to see what God will do. It was crazy. I'll never forget that moment. That moment when the Lord talks to you and you know that it's him. Yeah, it was that moment. Yeah. So, and then truly, like, it just kind of started healing from there. Our relationship did. Yeah.
Before we continue with Chris and Lisa's story, I want to tell you about Christian Healthcare Ministries. What you just heard from this couple is a story about bearing one another's burdens, about showing up for each other in the most painful, costly, and most vulnerable moments of life. Christian Healthcare Ministries was built on that exact same idea. They are a faith-based, nonprofit ministry founded in 1981 on Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. Christians voluntarily sharing one another's medical bills, not insurance, but a community. Since 1981, Christian Healthcare Ministries has satisfied over $12 billion in members' healthcare costs. 300,000 members strong in all 50 states and around the world, sharing 100% of eligible medical bills. No networks, no restrictions, just believers bearing one another's burdens. The same Acts 2 community that ActsSocial is built on and is alive and well at Christian Healthcare Ministries. Visit chministries.org to learn more and find the right plan for you. That is chministries.org. All right, now let's get right back to Chris and Lisa. And of course, God speaks through people, How important do you feel is your friends and the people that you do surround yourself with? Because I only think that because of course, your friend who gave you that advice, of course, had a relationship with God. I think I imagine, what if you had a friend who didn't have a relationship with God and they steered you in the opposite? Oh, forget him. You don't need that in your life. That's not what you deserve. All that kind of thing. How, and of course, God's always he's the authority over it all, over all life. But how important is it, do you feel, to have friends with a Christ-centered foundation in life?
Yeah, I think it's critical, and I think the people that you choose to surround yourself with when you're walking through something this devastating, it's really, really important. So I always tell my clients, choose wisely. Right. Who you're going to share your story with, who's going to be a safe person for you. I say, be weary of anyone who tells you what to do. You know, your friends need to come around you in that time and just hold space for you and accept, what are you thinking? What do you want? What do you need right now? You know, that kind of approach. So yeah, I think
And
it's important.
I think too, like keeping the circle small was really critical for us. And we really didn't know what we were doing. We had, I mean, obviously never experienced it and had no clue what we were doing, but God just gave us some, wise counsel, I think, and just Lisa was, just brilliant anyway. But, we found one person for each of our kids that they could go and talk to and be with. And then we had our two couple friends that literally physically held Lisa up at times. Me too. And then they were just for us. They weren't for one or the other. They weren't for quick healing, like just, forgive him and move on. Like, let's get through this. But they just were very, very supportive of us. And I think that's such a great thing, what you said is, people that are telling you what to do, probably not the right people to have around you.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Well, what does the restoration of a marriage after betrayal actually look like practically? Because I think a lot of people assume it is either you forgive and move on, or you leave. What did the real messy day-by-day process look like for you two?
Well, we need about 16 hours to answer that, but I'll give it a shot. It's a great question. Movies and television, they've got an hour or 30 minutes to resolve betrayal. I mean, you see infidelity in so many of the shows that are out now, right? It's just everywhere, and that is not reality. So remember that that's not reality. It's not a quick decision. It's not one decision. It's 1,000 little decisions, sometimes in a day. So it's asking, what is the next right step? Next right step. It's ugly. It's messy. You have two really broken people. They're broken in different ways. But trust has to be rebuilt. And that takes a lot of time and consistency and intentionality on the part of the betrayer. And I tell my clients to look for patterns. Look for patterns in your spouse. What are you starting to see over time consistently? The first thing a betrayed partner needs is to establish a sense of safety. Emotional safety. So your nervous system has gone haywire, all right? And she has to grieve what has been lost. She needs emotional safety. She needs to set and hold healthy boundaries. Boundaries are your friend. Build a good, healthy support team. We talked about that. And you can't choose recovery for your betraying partner. You can't choose that. One of the things that I told Chris from the very beginning is, you cannot heal for me. You can't get better for me. You have to get better because you want to be healthy, because this is what you want. And in that regard, this whole thing about controlling another person, that does not work. It does not work.
Well, I think too, like a lot of couples in this situation that want to fix their marriage, go, okay, well, let's go to marriage counseling. And it's like, no. You don't need marriage counseling, right? I mean, maybe you do, but not right now.
Yeah.
You really need individual counseling, because I look at it like the triangle, like I'm in one corner, at least in the other corner, and God's at the top. The closer I get to God, the closer we're going to get to each other, right? So if I'm growing in Christ and she's growing in Christ, we're going to eventually, because we're both aiming for the same person, we're going to get closer together as a result of that. Now, that doesn't solve all marital problems, but it kind of can, right? Because I start to see her in light of who I am in Christ, and my identity is in Christ. And so when I heal, it helps me to be a better husband, better friend, better employee, all those things. So, and guys will often ask me, how long does this take? And I always give them the answer that it's the same answer that any military man will give you when you ask him how many push-ups he can do. And you ask a military man, how many push-ups can you do? His or her answer would be all of them. That's how long it takes to heal from this. It takes all of them, all the months, all the days. And any day that you take off is one day more that it's going to take you, right? So it's just you continue to be faithful and consistent, and draw close to God. So
wow, that's great advice. Great advice. Well, Chris, what did it cost you to be fully honest with Lisa about the depth of what had happened? And Lisa, what did it cost you to stay and choose healing over leaving?
What did it cost to be fully honest with Lisa? It cost me to surrender, honestly. I mean, it's probably too long of a podcast to tell you everything. But I mean, what it cost me is surrender. I think that's the best way to put that. I was not going to, I was just committed to not ever lie to her again. I was not going to allow myself to lie to her. One of the comments I would say to her is, I'd rather lose you than lie to you again. And so I'll always be honest. And so I guess you could say what it cost me to be fully honest is $500 every 6 to 9 months, because I take a polygraph every 6 to 9 months. So that's what it cost me to be fully honest. But I mean, I do that because I'm known to be a liar. I've been a liar all my life. And so December 5th, 2018 is when I proved I wasn't, when I took my first polygraph. And like I said, I've taken one every 6 to 9 months since. And I will continue to do it because I want to continue to show her that I'm honest. But it's more for me, honestly, than it is for her. She's reached a level of trust, even asked me if I want, hey, are you at a place where you feel like you could stop taking them? I said, probably, but I want to keep taking them because one little small white light grows, as VeggieTales taught us a long time ago. So.
Accountability. That's huge. And let alone, like you said, if you give it an inch, I mean, you'll go miles. The same thing with addictions, and absolutely. Well, of course, on the other end of that, Lisa, what did it cost you to stay and choose healing over leaving Chris?
Every day, multiple times a day, I would pray and say, God, tell me what to do. What do I do? Do I stay and keep working at this, or do I leave and just focus on myself and do my own healing apart from Chris? And God would just meet me in that place. I mean, I didn't hear from him all the time on that, honestly, but something would happen and he kept showing up, getting healthier and healthier. I saw changes. I saw transformation taking place in his life. And I was like, wow, I want to kind of stick around and see what happens because of the incredible work that he was doing. The man he was becoming really attractive to me. And I was doing my own healing, and God was doing a deep work and showing me things in my life, growing me and healing me and setting me free from things, not like in the addiction sense, but setting me free from unhealthy patterns that I had just had in my life that I didn't even know until everything got blown up and I was able to kind of see like this. And I was like, oh God, thank you for showing me that. Now I can walk in greater emotional and spiritual maturity and health as a result of all of this. So I hope that answers the question, but yeah, I think that was good. I wanted a whole new marriage, and that was happening.
Right, through the same person, the different foundation. Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. That is powerful. Well, you both have been married for 30 years. Looking back now, what do you know about marriage that you wish you had known at the beginning, before the addiction and before the betrayal?
Yeah. Do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Well, I think that a big misunderstanding for some couples going into marriage is that a healthy marriage is based on two people trying to make each other happy. And that's not the case at all. It's actually built by two people who are committed to becoming emotionally and spiritually healthy. And then you're going to have a healthy marriage.
Right. Wow. Wonderful.
I think too, like one of the things I've learned is if we're going to be married and we have a healthy marriage, I need to recognize that Lisa is my biggest fan. And so anything that she says, or anytime she disagrees with me, or anytime she says something that maybe I felt like was a little wrong, I just have to see the umbrella that she still thinks I'm number one. You know, she loves me and she thinks I'm great. So I think so often, you know, I would hear things and I would feel like, you know, mainly because I was living a lie. I was two different people, but I would feel like she's attacking me, she's against me, and she's not for me. She just wants me to suffer, and you know, all those things. That was really recognizing that she's for me. So that's a big thing.
Yeah. And I think too, conflict is not your enemy. Conflict is not your enemy. It's how you handle the conflict. If you have a rupture in your relationship, how you repair that can actually bring you closer together than if you never had the conflict. So I would say don't view conflict as your enemy. It's how you handle it, and it can actually bring about incredible growth, incredible intimacy in that relationship. Yeah, and having realistic expectations too. I think you can run into a lot of conflict when one person has this expectation, another person has this expectation. You know, unmet expectations, that is just a formula for resentment. So
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of that quote in Proverbs where it says, "Open rebuke is better than hidden love." Just kind of gives me that flash of, you know, understanding that conflict, even though maybe it's convicting you, maybe they're convicting you, you know, it's not always just out of hate and malice. You know, sometimes it's love that you should listen to, let alone does God speak through people. You know, that's powerful. Well, thank you so much. Well, let's kind of switch topics here. A lot of people in the church go through exactly what you went through, but never talk about it publicly because of shame, because of what people will think, and because it doesn't fit the image of a good Christian couple. Why did you choose to go public with your story?
Going public has been a very slow and gradual process. The more we got free of shame, the more we wanted to share what God had done. So if you can imagine, who was it? The 10 lepers who came to Jesus and said, heal us, but only one came back to say thank you. That leper knew what Jesus had done for him. He had been taken from death to life, and he wanted to say thank you to Jesus. And I think, God has done such, and continues to do, by the way, God has done so much for us to free us from shame, to free us from people pleasing, to free us from caring what people think. That's a real freedom. And so we want to help others. We want to point to the Lord and say, look what God has done. And so that is more important to us than trying to manage an image. And it hurts my heart when I think about all of the people. I grew up in a church. My dad was a pastor. I mean, I am the church queen, but how many people are in the church that are managing an image because they're really not free to even ask for help? Like, they're hurting, but they're too scared to ask for help. And so, we're not running billboards in Times Square with our story, but We are open-handed with the Lord and just saying, if there's somebody you want us to help, somebody you want us to come walk alongside, we're available.
And I think too, for our story, I was very sensitive to this being Lisa's story too, right? It's our story. And so I was always very careful. Like if I was going to meet with a guy that we both knew, for instance, and I would just ask her, hey, I'm going to meet this guy for lunch. How do you feel about me sharing kind of our story? And so we had kind of a intro to our story, which is just kind of, yeah, hey, a few years back, I took my eye off the ball, really lost control of some things, and didn't tell the whole story, but and so we had this kind of like agreement, like what we would agree on that I could say to others, because I was so free that I was ready to tell the story, shout it from the mountaintops. But she was dealing with a lot of hurt and pain, and was still going through a lot of that. And there's still days that she's triggered and has those things, right? But I think, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but I always felt like there's this one kind of barometer. There's like a few people in your life that you're like, I'd never want that person to find something out about me negative, because they would just take it and twist the knife in my back and just really make me suffer for that. And I think when that moment kind of comes when you're like, I don't care what they think. My identity is not what they think of me. And so I think that we're probably getting, we've gotten closer to those moments. And yeah.
I love it. Well, Chris, Ezekiel 37 is your anchor chapter.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's because of chapter 36, where he says, I will do this, I will do that, I will do this, I will do this, right? And he's telling Ezekiel all these things that he's going to do.
Yeah.
And then 37, I think I can't remember exactly the words. You'd think I'd have it memorized by now, but I feel like it says that God transported him to this valley of dead bones. And and I just think, how cool is that, first of all, to be transported? I didn't know we'd do that today, but yeah. And so he's just gotten all these, I will do all these things for you. And now he's in this valley of dead bones. And he said, everywhere he looked, he saw dead bones, like no life, no hope, no future. Right. That's where I was in my addiction. I mean, I was the valley of dead bones. Outwardly I looked successful. Inwardly, I was spiritually dry. I was emotionally numb. I was powerless to change on my own. I wasn't like just struggling with behavior. I was living without God, without the life God. I was not living the life God intended me to live. And I love this question that God asked Ezekiel. He looked at him and said, son of man, can these bones live? Mm-hmm. And Ezekiel 37:3. And that's the question I think every person trapped in addiction eventually has to answer. Do you think these bones can live? Can someone this broken really change? And God's answer wasn't this behavior modification. It wasn't to try harder. It wasn't to get your act together. He brought life where there was death. And those bones, he's like, I loved his answer. Ezekiel said, I don't know. Only you know that, God. Only you know. And that's kind of where I was in that moment. I was like, I thought life was over. And I just sensed him saying, do you think these bones can live again? I'm like, I have no idea. Only you know that. And it, just the story where the bones come together. They weren't breathing yet, but then God breathes into them. And it's just, to me, such a picture of transformation, because God, it doesn't say just God gave them life. It says at the very end, God turned them into a vast army. And I was just like, wow, a valley of dead bones having life breathed into them, not just to live, but to be a vast army. Mm-hmm. And that is my conviction, that I want to be that vast army for him. And that's really, why that passage is so found, it's also the foundation of the Transformational Recovery Matrix, the book that I wrote, that it's more than sobriety. Sobriety is stopping something, and recovery is starting something. And, sobriety can put the bones back together, but the Spirit of God can breathe life into them, So God isn't simply trying to make better versions of ourselves. He's making us new. So I think that's the beautiful part of Ezekiel 37 to me.
That was powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, curious, what are your guys' thoughts on ActsSocial? ActsSocial, of course, is built on Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47, which is a community that bore one another's burdens, shared everything, and refused to let people walk through pain alone. What role did community play in your healing, and what does the church get wrong about how it supports people in crisis?
Community is so, so important. When you think about God's creation, he looked at Adam and he said, it's not good for man to be alone. The Trinity is relationship, right? And so God believes in community. We are not meant to do this journey alone. This journey of life, this journey of healing, this journey of recovery, we are not meant to do it alone. So community is really, really important. Chris joined a men's group right away, Castimonia, Castimonia, and it's a Christian men's support group for unwanted sexual behaviors. And I'm telling you what, that community of men rallied around Chris and really just has supported him. And now he is giving back and pouring back into them. Our close friends rallied around us, non-judgmental, loved us where we were every step of the way. So that's super important. And I would also say, I said this earlier, but Chris and I love the church. Chris was in full-time ministry when we met. My dad had his whole career in full-time ministry. We've served as teaching pastors at a church. So we love ministry. Sadly, this is just an issue that the vast majority of churches just don't have training on it, and they get it very, very wrong. I sadly see so many clients who have spiritual trauma on top of their betrayal trauma, and it's unintentional. The pastors, the spiritual leaders, they mean well. They're just not equipped. And so I would love to see more churches, more pastors really just seeking, like, how can we be equipped to receive people in this journey and to care for them? Because a lot of times the pastor, the church staff, they're the first responders in a situation like this. They are the first call because people don't know where to go for help. And so, if they can just commit to getting great training around that, that would be awesome. But
I would just, the only thing I would add to that is circles are better than rows, right? Rows are important. That's where church is, but circles are better than rows. One of the things, Castimonia, it's castimonia.org. It's a 12-step Christ-centered recovery group. And, one of the, story, I don't remember who said it, but one of the things that little quips in 12-step groups is that, a lot of meet in church basements, right? And so, then they say, 12-step groups meet in churches. The people on the first floor meet there to talk about God, and the people in the basement meet there to meet with God. And there's a lot of truth to that. And that's kind of being condescending towards what the church has done. I know we do more to talk about God, but if the church is doing it right, they're in enforcing and not enforcing, but in encouraging community, and that's the circles, putting people in circles. So
wow. Well, I love that. I completely agree. I think community is everything. Whether you're walking with Christ, at the moment, or whether maybe you're still exploring your faith, community is key. And I think it's one of the scary parts about our digital world. It's meant to bring people together, the social media aspects, and hey, you can connect with people that you never would have been able to connect with. But it kind of also isolates you in a way.
Absolutely.
It keeps you to yourself. And so I think community is powerful. And of course, that was a big premise of ActsSocial too, was to bring people together in an environment that's safe an environment. Of course, there's safe spots, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, your TikToks, but there's also the toxic stuff that comes out. There's the toxic content, there's the toxic people, the toxic communities that you come across. And I think the goal with ActsSocial was to set those parameters. Like, no, this is a safe space, a safe social media area where you can pray for people, request prayer, you can have that community, you can join groups and things like that. So I completely agree with you. Community in person, let alone online, is crucial to our walks. Absolutely.
Love what y'all are doing.
Yes, Ryan, we love what y'all are doing.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to flip it up to now. You both counsel and coach couples and individuals walking through exactly what you have walked through. What is the most common lie that you hear people believe about themselves when they come to you? And what is the truth that you speak over them?
One of the most common lies that I hear women believing is that if I can just control more, if I can just check his phone all the time, know where he is all the time, if I can get him in to go see this therapist or get him to go to this group, then I'll feel safe again. But and I understand that. It makes complete sense, because when betrayal happens, your entire world changes. The person you trusted most has become the source of deep pain. Suddenly everything feels uncertain. And so you're just grasping for safety. You're grasping for certainty. So it's natural for women to want to monitor, to manage or control their husband's recovery. But the hard truth is we cannot control another person's choices. We just can't. Healing and recovery, what I remind people of, or women of, is that you may not be able to control his journey, but you can control your own. And so I help women start to understand, like, what can I do to heal me? And that's not to say you're not working on the relationship if he's choosing recovery and that kind of thing. That is important, if he'll do his work, but you can definitely do your work. So, yeah.
Well, Chris, you work specifically with men recovering from sexual addiction, and you host the Purity podcast. What do you want men listening today who are hiding this to hear from you right now? Not as a counselor, but as a man who has been exactly where they are.
Yeah, I'd say I want you to know two things. You're not alone. I know what it's like to promise yourself this is the last time, only to end up right back where you started. You're not the only one that's done that. I know the weight of carrying secrets. I know the fear of being found out, being caught, the shame that tells you that no one would understand. Like I tell guys all the time, the porn industry did not become the multi-billion dollars, more than Major League Baseball, NFL, and whatever NBA put together, right, in revenue. So it didn't get that way because of me and you, right? It became that way for it's out there. The second thing I would say is there is hope. I can't promise you your marriage will survive. I spent nearly 30 years trying to overcome my addiction through willpower. It never worked. The turning point, honestly, for me was it wasn't when I got stronger. It's when I surrendered. I stopped protecting my secrets. I stepped into the light. I invited God and other men and even Lisa into the places I'd spent years trying to hide. So I think my encouragement is pretty simple. It's what I said earlier: is tell someone. It needs to be someone trustworthy, but tell them today. The enemy wants you to believe that exposure will destroy your life. In my experience, secrecy was destroying my life. Exposure became the doorway for me to find freedom. I'd say, look, you don't have to have all the answers. We say a lot of this, just take the next right step. Reach out for help, join a recovery group, begin walking in the light. The God who has been relentlessly pursuing you isn't waiting for a better version of you. You know,
Right.
He's inviting you to come to Him exactly as you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. I remember growing up, and even when our kids were younger, if we'd have a housekeeper come, we'd say, "Kids, clean up your room. The housekeeper's coming." And it was like, "What? That's weird." I understand it now that they're here to clean, not to clean up. Like you got to clean up. But that's how I think that's how we feel about God. Is like, okay, God, let me clean up before you get here. It's like, I see the way you clean up, dude. Like, you're not good at it, so just stop.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. I love it. Lisa, your book, Betrayal, Trauma, Survival Guide to the First 90 Days, is written for women in the earliest, most disorienting days of discovery. What are the most critical things a woman needs to do and not do in these first 90 days?
I'll just give you three. There's a few more than that, but I'll give you three right now. The first one is establishing safety. Your nervous system is going crazy. It's like you're being chased by a bear. Okay. It's saying alert, alert, danger, danger, danger. Okay. And so you're super emotional, dysregulated. So you need to establish, what would safety, emotional safety feel like for me? What do I need in order to feel safe? So for me, in the early days, I needed space in my house where Chris wasn't. And that's not to be ugly, but it's just to say, this is the person who had caused all the pain. I need to be someplace else at times where I can begin to feel safe. And when I start to feel safe, then I can start processing what has happened. And then I can start thinking about next steps and things like that. You can't really heal. You can't begin to heal if you're constantly dysregulated. And so it's super important to figure out, what does that look like for me? I need some safety. The next thing is to set healthy boundaries. I know this can be hard for a lot of women, and I think especially in Christian circles, what I find, and living in the Bible Belt, is us good little Christian girls have been taught, don't say no, always say yes, bring the casserole, say yes to the ask, whatever it is, right? And the servanthood has been used sometimes in a direction that causes women to think a boundary is bad. But actually, Jesus used boundaries. Boundaries are super healthy. And so explore that. What does that look like? And then the third thing I'll share, which we've talked multiple times about here today, is choose good support for yourself. If you have one person that feels safe, that's going to honor your story, that's going to validate how you're feeling and just be there for you, that's really good. If you've got a few more, that's good too. But
you don't need 30.
You don't need 30. Find those safe people. So you can get the support that you need. Yeah.
I was just thinking of this. Well, I don't think I've ever thought about this, but with those 3 points, how does a guy support his wife in the first 90 days? And if I just counted these 3 points, it would be to say, let her go and find a safe place. It would always offend me a little bit when she said, I don't feel safe. I'm like, I never touched you. It wasn't that. It was emotional safety. And so, like, in my head, I would maybe think that sometimes. When I kind of finally got that through to myself, or when she would tell me later in a calmer moment, like, this is what I mean when I say I don't feel safe, then if I allow that to get through my thick head, then what I do is I don't shame myself. Like, if she'd go away and I would just sit there and shame myself, I am a piece of junk, and like, I'm a horrible person, and and like, I can be broken and humble without shaming myself, right? And so being broken and humble is the right thing, not shaming myself. The second thing is, she said, talking about setting healthy boundaries. One of the hardest things for a wife to do in many situations is to set those boundaries. And I'll tell you why. Because she's scared. She's got kids that she's got to take care of. She's got you making the money, potentially, that you're bringing the money home. she's afraid to set boundaries because she's afraid, like, yes, this is the person that I'm most angry with right now, but this is also my lifeblood, right? Like, this is the person who's putting food on the table, and I don't want to lose that. So guys, if she's having trouble setting the boundaries, you know some of those boundaries. If you don't, call me. I'll tell you what they are. And you honor the boundaries whether she is or not. You have to honor those boundaries for her because she's going to find it difficult at times to honor those. And then the last thing, said getting with friends, and I think we've already covered that. It's just, guys, you need to surround yourself with friends.
Sorry.
You're good.
The other super important piece of this, Ryan, about finding support is that this is a specialized field of care. So there are certain things to look for in a therapist or a coach. Don't just go to any therapist or coach. They need to have specialized training, and that's really, really important.
Yep. And that would be like certified sexual addiction therapist for the betrayer, betrayal trauma, ActsSocial for both. But
ActsSocial is a nonprofit organization that trains therapists and coaches on how to treat betrayal trauma. So,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So I definitely said that wrong at the beginning.
No, you're so good. You're so good.
Why would you know how to say that?
It's so many letters.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And then, of course, I think another one of those qualifications, would you say, seek out Christ-centered therapists?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely would. You can't separate the faith piece from healing. God is a part of that.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Of course. Well, Lisa, your second book, 90 Days of Hope and Healing, picks up where the first one leaves off. What does that next season of healing look like? And what surprised you most about your own journey through it?
Yeah, I am really excited about this devotional. I don't know exactly what my thing is around 90 days, but I didn't intentionally try to make those match, but that's what put on my heart. But yeah, I think what's surprising is that healing is possible, because when this happens, I mean, it's so devastating. You really think, well, this is it. This is my life now. And it doesn't have to be. That doesn't have to be the story. I mean, I feel like I see a perspective of God that I never would have seen without this devastation. I'm not throwing parties and celebrating that this happened to me, but I can be really grateful at the same time for how God has revealed himself to me in such intimate, beautiful ways. If you imagine looking at a diamond and through the different parts of the diamond, right? The different facets, and I see a facet of God that I never saw before. And so I really want to communicate the hope that there is healing that is possible.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, we'll slowly start to wrap up here. For someone listening right now who doesn't have a faith background, who is in a broken marriage or struggling with addiction, but wouldn't call themselves a Christian, what would you say to them about why God matters in this kind of healing?
You haven't thought on that? I mean, that's a tough question.
I know, it's good.
It's a really good question.
What would I say to them about why God matters in this kind of healing? I've got a thought, but you go.
I guess part of this you have to believe that there is a God, right? I guess because God designed you. He knit you in your mother's womb. The one who designed you knows you best, and He knows how you're wired, and it's not too late to go to Him. So I think the best prayer in the whole Bible was the guy who said, I believe. He said, I believe, help me in my unbelief. And I think it's such a powerful prayer. So wherever you are today in your journey your faith journey, pray that prayer. And I would just say, I don't want to believe. Make me want to believe. Be that vulnerable to say, if you're really out there
Mm-hmm.
If you're really the one that created me, you designed me, show me, give me a desire to know you, and watch what happens. Yeah.
That's great.
You want to add on to that, Lisa?
No, that's amazing. I think that's great.
Yeah, I would also say look at the proof. If you're stuck in an addiction, or you're stuck in something that's kind of a cycle, you keep going back and forth, and you keep falling into that addiction, you keep falling into that hurt. Look that, hey, you can't do it on your own. This is going to take the higher power. This is going to take God. And of course that'll walk you on that journey, Chris, that you just mentioned. Discovering who that God is. But I think for at least the addiction side of things, hopefully it's very clear, when you keep falling back in, you keep going through those cycles over and over and over, it's not working on your own, or it's not working on your way and your route with it, to give it up to him, and let God show you. So I love it. Love it. Well, you both experienced shame at its deepest level. What would you say to someone who believes their situation is too broken, too far gone, or too shameful for God to touch?
Well, first I would want to hug that person if I could, and just reassure them and validate their pain. But then I think about something that I would say to my children, and I still say it to them sometimes, is when you have this deeply negative voice in your head, whose voice is that? Whose voice is that? Is that God's voice? Or is that Satan's voice, perhaps? Right? Would God say that? Or would God not say that? So pay attention. Where is this voice coming from? Right? What can you believe? God would never say you're too broken. You're not too broken for God, right? You're not too far gone for God. You're not too shameful for God. God would never say that. God accepts you right where you are. So I would say, pay attention to what you're listening to what you're allowing. If you're saying it to yourself, that is not something that God would say.
Yeah.
Listen to what God would say about you.
I remember a friend in recovery told me, when he basically said these words to the guy that he was sitting with, and the guy he was sitting with took a piece of paper out of his journal and he put it in front of my friend, and then he took a pen out of his pocket and put the pen down, and he said, "Hey man, I'm going to eat my breakfast, and while I eat my breakfast, I want you to write everything out that's impossible for God. Write out whatever is impossible for God. I want you to write it all out. What is impossible for God? Answer that question. What's too hard for God? Write it all out." And he started eating, and he said, "You haven't started writing yet. Like, what's going on?" And of course, the guy laughs. He's like, "Yeah, I mean, but it's hard to believe that in the moment. Mm-hmm. But when somebody challenged you and said, write that out. What's impossible for them? Nothing. Nothing's impossible."
And something I think I've experienced so much in my walk with God is because you're right. Not every thought is from God. Not every thought is, there to help you. And that quote that comes to mind is just take every thought captive,
yes,
and hold it towards God's word.
Yeah.
Would God say that, with having your identity in Christ, would he say that about you? Would he say that about his child? And yeah.
It's funny that the guy that I was talking about, that's actually his life verse. That's his life verse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly right.
It's crucial. I mean, how many thoughts do we have a day? I mean, it's such a crucial perspective to hold. Well, to close off, what is God doing in your marriage and ministry right now that excites you guys the most?
Well, we're having a lot of fun together. We're empty nesters, and so we're sort of like honeymooners. We just really enjoy being together and spending time together. Our marriage is so much better now than it ever was before. I love my role at a counseling practice here in Houston, actually, called Daring Ventures. I get to serve as a coach there, in addition to what we're doing with our Relentless Pursuit. So we're loving that, just coming alongside people. God just keeps bringing people to us, and we're just grateful to get to be a part of that. What would you say?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, we just love being together and with each other. It's so great. And then just the opportunity to mentor guys and coach them and love on them and just be a support to them and, hopefully give them wise counsel along the way. Just I think investing back into the community and helping guys find hope.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's so inspiring. So inspiring. Well, if you could leave every person listening with one truth to carry with them today, one thing about God, about healing, about hope, what would it be?
I would say, I think we kind of said it, right? But no one is beyond the reach of God's grace. I don't care how many times you failed, how long you've struggled, how long or how hopeless your situation feels. God is not He's not intimidated by your brokenness. In fact, He actually specializes in bringing dead things back to life. So I would say that, healing doesn't begin when you finally get your life back together. It begins when you stop hiding and you surrender your life to the one who has been pursuing you all along. And I would just say my story is proof of that. I thought exposure would end my life, but it became, I said earlier, it's the beginning of my freedom, really. And really what I saw as my greatest failure became the place where I experienced God's greatest grace. So I would just say, don't give up, take the next right step, trust God with the outcome. I can't promise you your marriage will stay together, but I can promise you'll be in a lot healthier place, and just keep pursuing Him. You'll discover every step that you take towards Him is really a response to the God who has been relentlessly pursuing you from the very beginning. So,
yeah. And if I could leave a betrayed woman with this, I would say that what happened to you is not the end of your story. I know betrayal can make you feel like your whole world has been turned upside down. It can make you question your worth, your identity, your ability to trust, things like that. But I want you to know this: you are not defined by someone else's choices. You're not defined by that. You're not less valuable because somebody hurt you. You're not forgotten by God because your marriage is in a painful season. Healing doesn't happen by pretending that nothing happened or rushing yourself to be okay. So just care for your heart, get that support, reconnect with God. He is interested in restoring you. God is there, and He is ready, and He's able to restore what's been broken and what's been lost. Your story's not over.
Wow, I love it. Well, Lisa and Chris, where can people find your books, your podcasts, and connect with Our Relentless Pursuit even more?
Thanks, Ryan. Our website, just go to our website, ourrelentlesspursuit.com. Everything is there. We have free resources there. I do a lot of free resources that go along with my podcast. And so you'll find that. You'll find links to our books and resources. And then
links to our podcast are on there as well.
Yeah.
You said that.
I don't know if I said that, but I meant to say that. And then I would say, if you want to have a conversation about how do I find the right person to help me in this season, we might be the right people to walk alongside you. If we are not, we want to help you find the right people to walk alongside you. So, thanks so much, Brian.
Well, of course. And of course, all their links will be in the description as well. Lisa and Chris, this has been an absolute pleasure. You both are just such a light in this world, and truly it's very inspiring to see your guys' transformational story. And I hope it is able to touch our listeners and touch them in all different ways, whether they're in a marriage, just on a solo walk in life and going through some addictions or whatever that may be. I pray that this touches the right person. And of course, thank you again for just being your guys' selves and for continuing to walk with God and to fight the good fight. So it's an absolute blessing to witness.
Thanks,
So,
Ryan. Thanks for what you do, man. Appreciate it.
of course. Absolutely. All right. Well, I love you guys so much. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it, man. Bye.